The Atlanta Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm Jon Birdsong with Atlanta Ventures, and in today's episode, we have Ryan Hersh, founder of Edison Electric Bikes. Ryan scratched his own itch when his 4-mile commute in Atlanta took over 1 hour. Through trial and error, he built the first prototype of what would be the first Edison Electric Bike. Fast forward 5 years later, and over 1,000 bikes have been sold locally, and they're just getting started. In today's episode, we talk about building a company out of his living room, the science of a quality electric bike, transportation in Atlanta, and much more. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to the Atlanta Story. Ryan Hersh, welcome to the Atlanta Story podcast, episode 18, last one of season 1. Really excited that you're here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, want to understand how you got to the point of building an electric bike company. But before that, y'all have a very big mission that tackles one of Atlanta's biggest problems, which is transportation, traffic. And when did you get excited about solving that problem?
I think it wasn't until after I kind of fixed that problem for myself, right? I moved to Atlanta, I took a job at Emory and I was 4 miles away. And, oftentimes my commute was taking me an hour to get to my desk. By the time I found a parking spot, fought for that spot, paid for it, and got to my desk, it was an hour to go 4 miles. You can almost walk that fast, right? So that's when I, started riding a bike to work. But I'm a bit of a sweater, right? And, sweaty guy, it's, wearing a tie sometimes is just not a good thing. Right. So, that's when I was like, okay, well, now the hills are the problem, right? 4 miles is just far enough and just hilly enough, for me to break a sweat.
Cause you're coming from Kirkwood, right? You're coming from Kirkwood.
Yeah, Kirkwood, which is south of Emory, right? And,
going through kind of Druid Hills, Clifton.
Yeah, exactly.
Area.
Yep.
Yeah,
going around the golf course there, there's quite a bit of topography there. Right. So, but I didn't actually realize that, this was something special until I fixed the problem, for myself. Right. Which we're kind of fast forwarding into the story there. But there was a point where I started to, just build bikes for my friends and coworkers and colleagues. And started to get the feedback there. And that's when, I realized that I was really, kind of standing at the forefront of, something really special, right? I'm liberating these carcades commuters.
Were you building bikes after you found the problem, or were you always a tinkerer in the garage?
Yeah, so definitely always a tinkerer. When I talk to folks in the shop, that's, I kind of introduce myself that way. I say that I'm that guy that can fix your router or I can fix your boat, right? Like I just love, taking things apart, making them better, making them faster, right?
And has it always been that way since, elementary school, middle school, high school?
Yeah, kind of ever since I can remember, I just remember always trying to take things apart, not, putting them back together was a little bit harder, but just getting inside of stuff and figuring out how it works really fascinated me. And then like fast forward to college, one summer I rented like some shop space and I basically built a race car. I pulled the engine out of a car, I took the engine to like a machine shop and we built and blueprinted it together. And I just wanted to be as involved as possible. And they were like, well, if you get involved, it's actually going to cost you more. And I was like, yeah, but this is like education. I want to know, I want to know how it works. So, I love doing that kind of stuff. I love working with my hands, we did like some renovations on my house. My dad, he was a really, really handy dude, so like, I think I just kind of, pulled from that,
Sure. So there's always been this entrepreneurial spirit of discovery and learning, but also, working for an academic institution. So there's this mesh of I guess, interests and alignment. So what was the role at Emory that you took?
So it was a project management role, and like formally, I got my education. I got a master's in business. But, I will say, like, when I was studying, it was like a little bit dry to me. So like there was, I found myself always taking like more like abstract and extraneous courses, that didn't contribute, directly to me getting a degree. But like, I took like quite a bit of psychology and art and photography and all these kinds of like other things, to make me feel like more, complete, like I was getting something out of my education. Last year, I spoke to a group of Georgia Tech students that were industrial designers, and I really connected with those kids. And I was like, man, looking back, I think maybe that would have been a better path for me. But I think I kind of kept the technical piece, and the tinkerer piece, and I guess I kind of had the business know-how, to launch a company.
Doing research, 2015 was the year that, is that when you started building bikes for your friends?
Yes. I think it was, let me think. I think it was late 2014 that I built my first bike. And the reason why I did that was just because, I couldn't find anything on the market that I liked, right? Everything was either, especially back then, right? I mean, because you're talking about 5 years ago. But everything that I found was either, overpriced or not good looking. Probably both of those things.
Bulky.
And like in 2015, sealed lead acid was still kind of like the battery technology that was being used on electric bikes, which is the same as like your car battery. So it's like, imagine like a briefcase that's mounted on the back of a bike, right? Not very pretty. And I remember going on a test ride and, on this goofy bike, and not to throw any shade, it's just a different time for bike. But, I get back from that test ride and I just remember like the feeling of freedom that I had, because I was like, I'm getting all the joy of riding this bike without like the strenuous piece, I felt like I was getting away with something almost, And I get back from that test ride only to find that bike was like $5,500. Mm-hmm. And I was like, my God. I was like, I know that, I can build something that weighs less than this and that is better looking than that. So the first bike that I built, though, I'll tell you, and, I could share this picture with you, but it wasn't better looking, but it only cost me about $2,000 to build. So,
and so when you decided to build that, it was for yourself. It was for it was scratching your own itch.
Yep, precisely. I never in a million years would have thought that, this would become a company. There was no vision of that. I remember, I was, engaged to my wife, and I had a couple motorcycles. You can see I collect guitars. I was also collecting motorcycles, and she didn't want me to die. So I had to liquidate the motorcycles, and I definitely had like a 2-wheel itch. And I was like, I could use this money to, build an electric bike. And then actually I ended up using, some more of that motorcycle money when I did my first production run of bikes, which was 18 bikes.
Nice. So let's talk about just the authentic demand. You built your first one early 2015, and so you're riding it along.
I was so proud of myself.
The rolling hills of Georgia. Everyone's probably looking at you being like, that looks like a pretty cool bike. And he's not pedaling that fast, and he's going a lot faster than it looks like he should be pedaling. And also, I mean, bike lanes are coming, a lot more frequent in the city of Atlanta, right? Which is probably helpful for Edison bikes, right?
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. Infrastructure in the past couple of years has like really come up, I don't know the exact number of bike lanes, but I think if you're talking about 5 years ago, I think we had like 60 miles of bike lanes installed. I think we're up to like over 150 miles now. So, yeah. So that's cool, and it really shows, people are using it. If you build it, they will come, right? So, but they don't make Atlanta any flatter, right? So that's where the electric part still comes in.
And so built bike 1, talk to us about why building bike 2, bike 3, bike 4, bike 5. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wow, people want these bikes. Talk to us about that kind of market pull.
Yeah. So, well, one, I really enjoyed, building the first one. And like I said, I built a couple for, just friends and coworkers that were kind of experiencing the same problems that I was. And then I was like, like each time I built a bike, I got a little bit better. I'd get an idea, or I'd find a motor that has the controller like integrated into it. And I'm like all about integration and stuff. So then I just started to like, basically build these bikes and sell them on Craigslist. I'd build a bike and I would sell it on Craigslist the same day. And I wasn't really like making any money, but I was, figuring out ways to improve, my design. Right. So like each step along the way, like each bike that I built, it would get a little bit better. Right. So I started doing that for a while and I was just selling my experiments off of my front porch. I would meet people. I live across the street from a park and, I'd tell people to go on test rides around there and it was cool. That's when it really started to like click and it became addicting because like the look on somebody's face when they get back, from their first test ride on an electric bike. I can only imagine it looked, exactly how it did for me. And that's like what's really addicting. Right. And then fast forward to today where like, I can't, except for rainy days, but pretty much every single day I'll see, at least a few other Edisons out on the road and just to see like how, these bikes are fitting into people's lives and they're actually using them. It gives me goosebumps. I absolutely love that to see like somebody using my design, to get somewhere faster.
Well, definitely want to get into design. Also want to get into just the sort of the time management, right? I mean, so you're working at Emory, coming home and then working in the garage for the next few hours. Like how does someone build a company, while maintaining a quote unquote corporate job?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, back before my son was born and we didn't have a garage, I was using like our formal living room and a bedroom. And my wife was like, I don't want to bring our son home to a bike shop. This is dangerous. And it's, she always has a lot of explaining to do. Like when, family comes over and the whole house, is filled with bikes. So, my wife, she really kind of forced me to, become legit. She was like, either, you need to get out and like make this thing, right? Like make it become a thing, or you need to give up, So that's actually when I really started to get serious about it. One of my very best friends, he's a real estate agent here. And he's big into alt transit, affordable housing, all these kinds of cool things. And he's kind of just been like, watching me in the background, like take these bikes to festivals and stuff and see if it was like an investable, type of company. And, thankfully he thought that it was, right. So, that's when like we really, kind of became legit. We got, the showroom in Kirkwood, built that out, really put like kind of a brand to the bikes, which, that's another picture that I can share with you because, I got my MBA and I thought that I was good at, marketing. So I designed like my own logo and, there's a lot of technology in these bikes, right? So I really wanted to kind of communicate that, through the brand. And, I remember, meeting, with some branding folks and they started putting up mood boards and that kind of stuff. And they were like, Ryan, we've been to your house. We've seen your bikes. There's one thing that's very clear. You like clean lines a lot. They were like, we need to clean this up. And, so, that's when we kind of shifted over to, just like this simple font and a lightning bolt, it's recognizable from far away. I was like, man, I paid you guys the big bucks for a lightning bolt.
Yep.
But it certainly worked. So, it was completely worth
Y'all's
it.
brand is really strong. And you see it. I mean, when folks are riding, you see the bolt and you're like, all right, that's an Edison.
Yeah.
And so
for
from
sure.
2015, 2016, how many bikes are you making? When did it go out of your living room to come, official?
Sure. So let's see. We opened our shop in 2017. That's also when I built a 2,000 square foot garage behind my house. That's where we do build nights. I used to pay with beer and pizza. Now I have to pay with real money.
Yeah. Tell us more of what a build night is. Do you just invite over friends and
yeah, exactly. We do some wrenching and, it's a good time. I think I kind of touched on the festival. So I actually met a guy at one of these festivals he studied bike building at UBI in Portland. It's like the school, for bicycles. And like I had done some welding, like just fabricating like turbo brackets for cars and that kind of stuff. But like he really kind of taught me like, to be like a real stickler like on bead patterns, for the welds. And this was kind of also right around the time that, that I was like, I want to make my bike like my iPhone, right? Like I want all the parts, that make it work to be housed, inside of the product itself. Why are there no bikes like that? By the way, there's kind of three main components that comprise an electric bike, or a hammer drill, or really anything. You have a battery, a motor, and a controller. So like that was kind of my aim. And, I talked to this guy quite a bit, and we became really good friends, just talking about it over beers. So we fabbed up, our first 18 frames. They were made out of steel. They were kind of heavy. And they were also pretty expensive to produce. So our first couple production runs, we made them out of steel, and we made them here. We imported our batteries from Japan, from Panasonic. We got our motors from China. Don't throw any rocks at me. But yeah, we were like, if we are going to scale this thing and do production runs of 100, these things, they need to be made out of, aircraft grade aluminum. And, we shouldn't be doing that. Right. So, now our frames are made in South China. And
were you building a list of people that wanted to buy before building all of this? Like, did you know that there would be people that wanted this?
No. Well, it was kind of just a gamble. I was going to these festivals, and, like we'd have some people sign up for pre-orders, but, in those smaller production runs, we're just building batches and, and still selling them off the front porch at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Craigslist
so I know we're kind of hopping around on timeline a little bit here, but that's okay. But let me think. What was I going to say?
So you had 18.
So with China, I kind of gave you the cliff notes there, because that was actually like almost a 2-year process of getting that right. And what we ended up doing was actually shipping them one of our steel frames and saying, hey, copy this in aluminum. And once they had a template and they were able to make a mold, a frame mold, it's been cruise control ever since then. But I wish, looking back, that I would have done that first, right? Because, there was a lot of prototypes that I received that were just, not very good. And as far as like tracking down a frame manufacturer, it was basically just cold calling manufacturers. And I picked the one that spoke the best English, honestly, because I knew that communication, was going to be the most important thing.
Absolutely. And that was for the first, well, I guess you built the steel frame, 18 of those, sold those. So there's 18 steel frame Edison bikes out there.
OGs out there.
OGs. Yes. Now moved to aircraft carrier or aircraft quality aluminum. And the whole while building this, while at night, right? And just this is a passion project that's really continues to evolve into a real business. And simultaneously, I mean, I'm sure you read about the competitors out there that are, getting venture-backed money and, all this stuff. But, here you are every day working on the craft, brick by brick, wrench by wrench. And and keeping it focused on your customers here, how do you view competition and knowing that probably 2015 is very different than 2020, 2021? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So we've seen some bike companies kind of come and go, I have no problem, with competition. We have some online, big, guys that are doing $100 million a year, rad power bikes. That's actually a call that we get all the time. They're a couple $100 cheaper than we are. Some of the specs are similar. So people are like, why should I buy from you, versus one of your competitors? And I will never, throw shade at any of our competitors, because we're all here for the same reason. We're trying to get more people on bikes. Right. So, and the answer is one, you get what you pay for. Right. You will never find us in retail because we have razor thin margins. Could we charge $3,000 for our bike? Absolutely. But part of our mission, right, is to make, this transportation practical. And for it to be practical, it has to be affordable, right? So this isn't, just a bike that's going to sit next to some dude's Tesla, right? This is for the guy that's got 2 jobs in Kirkwood and a 20-year-old car that's becoming increasingly, unaffordable to maintain. And all of a sudden this becomes, a really, viable, car substitute, right?
So I loved that researching prior to the interview. I loved the comment of this isn't, if you look at it as a toy, it's expensive, but if you look at it as transportation, it's insanely cheap. And I thought that was interesting, and just the way that you frame, Edison's market, right? So elaborate on that.
Yeah. So, we're really trying to make Edison for everybody, right? Because when you mobilize somebody, you empower them, right? You're increasing their radius. Yes, it's, fun to ride and all those kinds of things. But, all that being said, we're building our bikes as car replacements. So people are using them every day, right? And if I'm going to put my name on it, it has to be good, right? It's got to be quality, So we use really good hydraulic disc brakes, that have really good stopping power, even when it's wet. We use top of the line batteries. We use motors that work underwater, so we really tried to overbuild this thing so people could count on them day in and day out. Right. Did I get distracted? Did I answer that question right?
You did. Let's talk about the Edison. Let's talk about electric bikes in the bike market in general, right? So you have the people that are, riding at 5 a.m, going out to Stone Mountain, coming back, right? A lot of, and cyclists, right? Let's just call them cyclists. And where does Edison fit into the overall world of biking and cycling? Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, because I've given some talks at bike events, and I always kind of preface it with saying, if you're already out there riding a bike and you're commuting on what I like to call an analog bike, you're not my target market, because you're already out there riding, but this is for, basically anybody else that, wants to ride, right? You want to buy a bike that you're going to ride, right? Because you can drop $2,000, on just a normal analog road bike, right? So you want to buy something that you're going to ride all the time, right? Something that you can look forward to, and maybe you don't want to, work as hard going up the hills, or maybe you are trying to commute and not sweat. So I think in the cycling community, I think that we're pretty well received, because we're all about getting people outside of their cars, right? And I think that cycling, just in general, has kind of been stigmatized. Only here in the USA though, because it's recreation number one, and then maybe transportation, right? For a very small percentage of people. But if you go anywhere else in the world, like I have family in Germany, and, you know, if you go to Europe or South America or anywhere else, the bicycle is transportation number one. Recreation is just a benefit, right? So like we're trying to kind of like, you know, reposition, right, that paradigm, because it's definitely real. You know, I remember showing up to Emory, and I was in the elevator holding my bicycle helmet, and I remember it was kind of a friend, more of a, you know, just a colleague, and he had a bag of granola, and he sets the granola in my helmet, and he's like, "Here you go, you bike hippie," you know, like it's such like this, like, you know, kind of like, you know, like the only people that ride bikes are like, you know, these like, you know, real green or, you know, just whatever. And we're trying to really just kind of change that view.
So let's talk about the customer base evolving from that question then, right? Fast forward to today, before we press play, you shared that, you know, you've got what, thousands of bikes of Edison, you know, around Atlanta at least. Like, who is the Edison customer, right? Is it the lawyer working in Midtown? Is it the tech person? Is it the Emory professor? Like, share who it is.
Yeah, it's everybody. It's all those people and more. You know, it's really cool, and that's like one of, I guess, kind of the mottos that we haven't started pushing yet, but it's definitely a developing theme, is that Edison is for everybody. You know, I mean, like we've had so many people come into the shop, and the dialogue is, we just got back from CarMax. We're going down to a single car family, and we just know that Edison is going to be, you know, the right way to go with this, right? You know, and then of course we got people that are like, you know, we put 2 on the back of my Tesla. You know, I mean, it's like, it's literally everybody, every color, every, you know, gender. Like it's really cool, you know. The pandemic kind of messed us up, but one of my goals for 2020 was to kind of cultivate this community, because, like, you know, I was like really focused on the bikes, and at some point I realized that it's more about the people. You know, it's our ridership, you know, and these people, they want to get together and go, you know, on Edison group rides and that kind of stuff, right? And like, I just love the idea, you know, of doing a shop party, you know, where we go on like a ride. And I just think that would be so cool and special. And some, you know, everybody has something to connect with each other about, you know. It's just a really cool, beautiful thing. And then the pandemic happened, right? So maybe that'll be the 2021 initiative, is to get these Edison group rides going.
It absolutely will. And so where do you take Edison, right? So do you want this to be something where you have 5,000 employees and you know, just each year you just continue to grow? Or do you take investment? Like, what's your vision for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like I said, it's really, you know, we're not like this big box bike company that's just focused on bottom line, right? Like, we really want to like grow our ridership and fix a problem at the same time. Like, I want my company to be known as a company that does good work, right? Like, and giving back to the community. So like, we're really like focused on Atlanta right now. We want to dial in the Atlanta market, you know. I think there's still lots of work to be done, like right here, you know, like we're talking about with, you know, our infrastructure, you know, for bicycles is getting much better. And like, if you think about like a bank holiday or something where there's maybe just 5% less cars on the road, trip times are usually cut in half in Atlanta, right? So it's like, if we could just capture, you know, like enough of Atlanta to start thinking outside the box being the car, you know, we could really make Atlanta a better place, you know, not just for our riders, but also for the people that are commuting by car, you know? So, you know, I think we still have quite a bit more work, you know, here in Atlanta. I think our growth strategy, as far as like bringing on capital and that kind of stuff is, we're launching a cargo bike here pretty soon. I'll send you a picture of that too. It's pretty cool. But I co-designed it with Georgia Tech. It's amazing. One of our big mantras has always been get there faster. I even got the domain gettherefaster.com.
Nice.
Which, it's not that applicable anymore, because everybody's working from home and stuff. But, I want it to be, get there faster with your stuff, right? Because if we're going to be a car replacement, people have things to move or kids to move or, gear or whatever. So, it's this really cool long tail cargo bike, that like a full grown adult could sit on the back, so like it could be the ultimate date night. I could throw my wife back there and ride around.
Nice.
But it's a really cool thing. We're going to be launching that. And I think we're going to go like the crowdfunding route. We get calls all the time asking, when is it going to come out? Are you producing the cargo bike? But I just have no way to know, because it's kind of niche still too, you don't see a whole lot of cargo bikes out there. So I think the best way to do that is going to be to crowdfund it. So we have that coming down the pipe. And then I think our other strategy, once we like really, and I think we're doing a pretty good job figuring out like our model here in Atlanta, I would like to just start copying this like in other cities,
And is that model go get 1,000 bikes on the road that people find through just kind of word of mouth and help us understand what that model is right now from just let's just call it the last 4 years. Cause to me, it feels like very, very organic.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think, not so much word of mouth, but people just seeing Edison's on the road, right? If somebody stopped at a light or something, they say, yeah, it's great, or something like that. But most of the time, the question that I ask when somebody walks in the shop is I say, how did you hear about us? And, most of the time it's, I saw one and I Googled you guys, or I Googled electric bike, and, I joke and I say, oh, Google did their job, but it's definitely presence, just, having everybody out there on bikes, I think has been like our biggest, marketing piece. Right. And then also, just because, I think that they're local, people want to kind of become like a part of our story. Right. And that's why I'm saying like the people are so much more important than our bikes. Right. So like, we really try to, like when people buy an Edison bike, they're buying into our family. And that's really what this is all about. So it's like, let's make more families, in other cities.
And we're going to take a quick break here and share that this podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business out of Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com. How valuable is the center of influence from building perspective, right? I mean, obviously you can test ride an Edison at Ponce City Market, right? And like I get this feeling and that you talk about kind of the European way of travel, right? Where people go in town and they will grab lunch and go to a cafe and then head back home. How when you think about cities and you think about the future of Edison, right? Talk to us about what sort of demographics, what sort of transportation and commutes are you looking? What is that sweet spot for Edison, right? Do people in Alpharetta buy Edison bikes?
They do. So I found that folks that are, OTP, most of the time, they're a little bit older demographic, right? They might be retiring. They're going to put these bikes on the back of an RV, and it's cool. We get pictures, of Edison's, in all kinds of exotic places. But I think that's kind of been the trend, people, that are out in the burbs, for the most part, they're buying this more, as like a recreation type thing. I would say 9 times out of 10, though, it's a commute, right? So I think like our key target market is people that live within 5 to 10 miles where they work, right? And pretty much everybody that lives, in the city works, in the city for the most part, right? So that's kind of our ground zero, I think. It's just people, that are commuting to work. And it's just a cool thing because like when you're in a car, you're isolated from everything. I've met so many people like on my Edison bike, just at a stop sign or something like that.
It's a completely different experience. You go different routes, right? You're
exactly.
probably not going to go down Peachtree or Piedmont, right? You're going to go through the neighborhoods and
exactly. And that's my utopia, right? Like that's what we want to build is, if we could get everybody out on bikes, I just think it would make Atlanta a better, like you're going to fall in love with it a completely different way.
So true.
And, so.
What, talk to us about balancing, corporate, entrepreneur, and then family, right? I mean, how do you burn the midnight oil from 10 to 2 working on bikes, or what's kind of your day-to-day flow?
Yeah, sometimes. So like when we get 100 frames and, sometimes when we're out of stock, we'll take pre-orders. I'm kind of old fashioned like my dad. I don't like selling something I don't physically have, but, I'll take pre-orders, right? So then we have to fill them. So, back to those build nights, you should come to one of those. But, you got
so fun.
You have 100 frames and, boxes and boxes, and like, we'll build all the way through the night, to fill pre-orders because we want to get people rolling into the weekend, and people are, the folks that do pre-order, they're excited about it. We want to get them rolling as quickly as possible. Right. So like anytime we are doing production runs, things are getting bonkers, right?
Do you come out in batches then? I mean, do you say, hey, we're going to build another 100 and then you sign up now? Like how do you?
Yeah. So if we run out of stock, we'll like shift over to a pre-order model until we can get back in stock. Usually we'll, take like $100 off or something like that, just to say, thanks for waiting. But yeah, I mean, so like, that's kind of like what these, and we're doing like 5 of these a year, so, I mean, that's like, it's pretty exhausting. Sometimes when you feel like you finished one, then the next shipment of frames is coming pretty soon. So definitely, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, definitely with build nights, those are crazy times. It's hard. It is hard to, be a good dad and a husband and a company owner and, an employee at CDC. Usually when I'm doing really good at one, I'm failing at another, to be honest with you. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day.
Totally.
And it's a busy time. It's a good time. But I'm just honestly trying my best.
Is Edison, is it growth? Is there any cyclical nature to the buying of bikes, particularly in Atlanta? Right. It's not like we're in Florida or Arizona.
Yeah, it's highly, highly seasonal. So it's springtime and fall are definitely like the biggest bike times. Summer, there's usually a dip around July, just because it's so hot outside. People aren't wanting to go out. And then it's pretty flat when it's 30 degrees out, right? Unless you're really hardcore. We do have some sales, around that time, but it's nothing. So it's very, very seasonal here in Atlanta, I would say.
Do you think there'll be a point where you say, similar to the moment when you took it out of your living room into the now 2,000-foot garage, will there be a point where you say, all right, I'm burning the ships and I'm going all in on Edison, and this is what I'm going to, so long corporate? Like how do you think about that?
Wow. Yeah. That's a question that my business partner asks me every day. He's like, why are you still, why are you still working at the CDC? And I'm like, it pays the bills and it allows us to keep reinvesting into the company, right? And he was like, but, if you could give yourself 100% to Edison, how much more do you think we could grow it? And I struggle answering that question. I don't know, it's funny, like as risk loving as I am, I think I'm still, just being a dad and a husband, I'm still just a little risk averse. I don't know. Like, what if one day everybody wakes up and they decide they don't want to ride electric bikes anymore, Or like, I just hate the idea of thinking of like, oh man, if I don't sell a bike today, like we can't keep the lights on or something like that. Right. So, I don't know.
You seem pretty marketable. I feel like you can always go apply for a job somewhere.
Yeah, maybe. But I've really been able to hire some really good, solid help. And it's like, if you could find somebody that does something 80% as good as you, let them do it, right? And pay them to do it. And the cool thing is I've found people that can do things way better than I can, right? Yep. So it's just been a huge blessing, to have some really, really good, coworkers at Edison.
Absolutely. Well, a couple more questions. I know we're coming up on time, and wanted to just learn a little bit more about the science of the bike, right? I feel like you've got great design, sleek look. What makes Edison a scientific marvel in your opinion?
I think it's one of the lightest electric bikes on the market. It's only 45 pounds. The motor, it's called a planetary geared hub motor, but it's kind of a mouthful. But basically, it can freewheel. A lot of electric bikes, they'll use the direct drive motor. And, when you ride it, when the bike is powered off, there's resistance. So, like, I really wanted to make sure that this thing was like a bike, number one, right? Like, you can ride this thing, with it completely turned off, and it's still like an enjoyable experience. Those relay bikes, the blue ones, the bike rental ones that are, they don't have a motor or anything on them. This bike is 11 pounds lighter than one of those, right? So if you ever did manage to kill the battery, which would be a pretty impressive feat, you could still ride it home. It still has 7 gears. It's perfectly balanced. Like if you pick it up by the top tube, it's balanced front to back perfectly, right? So like it rides and looks and feels very much like a normal bike. And that was very, very important to me, to kind of like offer that experience, so that it doesn't feel chunky, Yeah. You can still pick it up, carry it up some stairs or load it on a bike rack or whatever you got to do. I think I mentioned we use top of the line Panasonic battery cells. I have a spec sheet from Panasonic that says that these cells, at 1,000 charge cycles, they still retain 80% of their energy density. So the batteries are not going to stop working altogether. They'll just work at a diminished capacity. But you're looking at, like 3 years, minimum use on our lifespan. And we've actually found that these batteries have been exceeding our expectations. Tyler, our mechanic, I think he just rolled over 19,000 miles on his bike. And it's crazy because he was actually a customer way before he was an employee of ours. And he's racked up almost 20,000 miles and he has no reports of degradation. His battery is about 3 years old. We have some other folks that are around 15,000 miles with no reports of degradation. And like 10,000 miles on a bike would be like over 100,000 miles on a car, just kind of like, comparison wise, right?
Before we press play, you said you guys did a software update this morning. Tell us the latest and greatest of the software.
Well, so this software is related to the CDC, so this is my day job.
Got it.
but I can, I can just tell you for the CDC, I do cancer informatics for them. So there's these state cancer registries that are all across the country. Anytime cancer case is reported, It basically goes through our application and then goes to a CDC database that they can run cancer surveillance on it. Completely unrelated to bikes, but that's basically what I do, for the day job.
Sure. And then we always ask these questions to every guest to finish up the interview. But why Atlanta, and what's Atlanta done for you?
Oh, I love Atlanta. So I born and raised. I grew up in Tucker, so not too far away. And I think that we live in the best city in the world. There's so much history here. I love the food here. We have a great music scene. I mean, it's a cool place to live, and I just can't imagine myself anywhere else. That's probably why I'm slow on my growth strategy, because I don't want to leave this place.
Very, very well said. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being part of the Atlanta Story podcast. We really, really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Lucas and Jon Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.